There we go. So we are live. So I know, guys, I apologize. I haven't been live lately. There's been a lot going on. My mum's actually just got back from hospital today. So, yes, so a lot going on. But obviously, welcome everyone back to the MC Real Life Chat. We have got Alison Pena, aka Bad Widow, which has come on basically to discuss resilience and things like that regarding grief and stuff. So I'm really excited to speak about that because a lot of us go through, grief and things like that. And I think a lot of people don't always know how to deal with grief either. So that's kind of what interested me when I was reading your bio, was that, you had built this resilience to what you've gone through, which the main part of obviously what I read, and I do want to send my condolences for, was what you said about your husband who obviously passed away, which obviously I'm only 23. I've not really lost anybody yet, so I can't empathize or sympathize with it. But when I did read that last night, I was like, wow, like for somebody to lose somebody so close but come out, positively at the end of it is such a big thing. And it was actually kind of inspiring, I'm not gonna lie, because like there's so many things that like I go through and I'm like, oh my god, my life's gonna end, do you know what I mean? And it's just minuscule little things, and then you look at what other people go through and how they can change it to something positive is such a good and amazing thing to do. So again, what I normally do on my podcast is I kind of just hand it over to you for a little bit just to introduce yourself and things like that. So if you want to go ahead.
Sure. So I'm Alison Pena. So I had been with my husband 25 years when he died. So longer than you've been alive.
Wow.
And it was close to half my life. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2015, October 2015, and he died at home in my arms, just the two of us, September 10th of 2016. And then I was a widow. And if you've been with someone that long, 25 years is a long time. You're sort of wound around each other like vines. Mm-hmm. It's hard to separate you from the other person, what you like from what they liked, or from what you like together. And so it's really adrift. The first year was sort of this wasteland of grief. There are some very specific things that happen after you experience a loss. And I wanted actually to speak to what you said about not having been through my particular experience of loss. Mm-hmm. Grief, everyone's experienced grief in some way. Yeah. Breakup of a relationship, loss of a pet, leaving a home, losing a job you love. All of these are things we grieve. We just don't think about it that way.
Yep. No, I can agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was a widow, suddenly a widow. I had no idea what that meant. And I had to figure it out. Immediately after my husband died, I had gaps in my memory. I had the attention span of a fruit fly, and my energy couldn't be counted on. So I couldn't reach out to people easily. I couldn't work easily. Mm-hmm. I was a consultant who couldn't consult because I couldn't deal with people. And I was a proofreader, medical editor, but I couldn't focus and I had gaps in my memory.
Yeah.
I couldn't do anything I was qualified for. And for a while, I just contracted, because I just needed to heal and I just needed to do less and see less people and sort of be with myself for a little while. Mm-hmm. So I just didn't have much.
Yeah. I think obviously isolating after grief is really common though, isn't it? You tend to put yourself in that little bubble. But at the same time, like I think because the grief is it just kind of takes over everything. So there's no logical thinking either. So whereas normally you'd be like, oh, I don't feel great. let me maybe speak to somebody or reach out to someone, your brain can't quite comprehend it. So what it does instead is it goes, I can't do this. I need to step back. And I think that's quite a scary thing to have to go through, to be honest. So
yeah, it really is. It really is. And it's not even, I don't feel great. It's, I don't feel like myself.
Yeah.
I don't even recognize myself, because after a loss, in the middle of grief, you're not the same person.
Yeah, especially with 25 years. Like that's a long, long time.
A long, long time. So I didn't even know who I was. And what happened was that I contracted. And then at a certain point, I was like, my life is now too small. Because this wasn't who I was. I was a, active, vibrant person. I did consulting. I, did all this different stuff. And then I had this little world that I created, and I started wanting more, wanting to make something, a bigger world for myself. But I couldn't do any of the work I was qualified for. And my energy for people was still pretty limited. So the first thing I did, and the first piece of how I work with people, is to re-engage, actually get out there, back out there. It's not something that happens automatically. And it's something that worries me about right now. So during the pandemic, everything shut down here anyway. Yeah, I'm in New York City. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we had the worst numbers in March and April of 2020. And I live horrible. I live right next to the ER parking lot of a hospital. Oof. And so ambulance sirens 24/7, and literally 25 ambulances in that parking lot at all times when I looked out my window. It was terrifying. Terrifying. And so this getting back in the world after we've not been with each other or touching another human being is going to take this kind of fortitude. It's going to take a choice, right? Because we've been grieving all the things we missed.
Yep.
And so re-engage, get back, choose something and do something. Even if it's not what you could do before, do something. So the first thing I did was I took a job in a Halloween pop-up store. Do you guys have those?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's something that just pops up. A vendor takes a location for Halloween or Christmas, and then they sell items for that kind of thing. So I had a girlfriend who was a widow, and she had this pop-up store, and I worked for her hanging costumes on racks because I couldn't. Big difference. It didn't take the brain power, but I didn't have the brain power. It didn't take the energy because I didn't have that. Right. But it was a step.
Of course.
Yeah. And the danger is to sort of beat yourself up that you can't start from where you were before, except that you can't. In the middle of grief, you just can't. So by taking that little job, I started to build a bigger world for myself. And then I could keep going.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, sometimes it does take that first step. And that's always the hardest one to take, is that first step. But no, with everything that you said there, like, I do completely agree. Like, obviously you've taken something that, you'll be able to do, you'll be able to function to do what you need to do. But as you've said, it's now led on to you being the person that you are now.
Exactly. And you have to start somewhere, and you have to be kind of gentle with yourself when you're in that raw place, and be willing to start somewhere, and be willing to honor where you are, because you can't do anymore. And then celebrate, oh, wow, I went and for 4 hours I hung up costumes.
It's an achievement.
It was
an achievement. Yeah,
it was. It was crazy because I was doing so much more before, but baby steps. So
Exactly.
one of the first things I'd say to your audience is be easy on yourself.
Yeah,
Grief is
I'll be honest, I'm guilty of going too hard on myself sometimes. And that's why when I'm listening to you, I'm like, do you know what? I can take this myself. Because we are our own worst critic, like all the time. Like we'll pull ourselves to pieces. And I think, as you've just said, like, yes, the job that you did was completely different, but it's still an achievement that you managed to do it. And I think a lot more people do have to go, right, what have I done today? Like me personally, like I went through a stage where I was really low and I would make my bed every day. And for me, that was like, oh, I've just made my bed. Do you know what I mean? But when I spoke to somebody, they were like, but that is an achievement. You have made your bed. It might be small, but it's still something to look at.
Exactly. It's something to celebrate.
Yeah.
Big or small, when you can't do a lot, a small thing is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important for people to know. Because we go, well, but it was just that little teeny thing. But if that little teeny thing is all you could do that day, then that was not a teeny thing at all. Mm-hmm. The second thing, and the second way that so the first piece is re-engage. The second piece is reinvent. Yep. So after any loss, you're not the same person. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, I was with my husband 25 years. So we were wound around each other like vines. And there were ways in which my opinions and what I said I did and didn't like were shaped by his in all that time. Mm-hmm. And if you think about early in a relationship, what happens is that there are times you just kind of go along. So, well, they like this, so I'm going to do more of that. And they don't like this, so I'm going to do less of that. Yep. And then if the relationship goes on, then those things get set in stone. And you've given up something that mattered, or you've taken on something that didn't actually matter to you. Yeah. And so after Dave died, what I did was reinvent was looking at all that stuff again and trying to figure out who I was without him. So I was single, I was married, I was widowed. Who was I? I mean, I honestly had no idea.
That's always the hardest thing, though, isn't it? With any loss, it's always the hardest thing to step back and go, actually, who am I without this person? Yep. It is a scary thing to go through as well. So I take my hat off to you that, you have done it.
Yeah, it's really scary. And it happens with any loss. So let's say you really love a job and identify yourself with that job and you lose that job. Who are you when you're not that? Mm-hmm. Who are you when you're not in that role doing that thing? We think of ourselves as stuff outside of ourselves. When outside of yourself blows up, who are you then? Inside. Yep. And so this
is a good question.
Yeah. and it's kind of it's like the Chinese crisis and opportunity. Because in the crisis, you get a chance to look at things again. Mm-hmm. And in any life, there's a lot of time where you just kind of go along and you do stuff. Like you go to a job or you pay a bill or you are in a relationship or not, and you're with family. You're just going along and doing things. And we don't think about, is this still the direction I want to be going? Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happens with the loss is that you relook at that stuff. Okay, my whole life is blown up. So is the path I was on before the same one that I want to keep going on?
Yeah,
Or
because
am
I
I?
suppose everything's kind of is completely different now, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. And if there are things that you've just defaulted to, you've just been going along that no longer fits who you are now, there's a chance to change that. And what happens very often is that people, they look at the people that they used to like, the things that they used to like to do, and they review them. Do I still like this? Do I still want to do this? Is my career going in the direction I want it to go still? Or am I going to make a pivot?
Mm-hmm.
Because what's important rises up. What matters. You don't think about saying I love you until you can't say it anymore because the person's gone.
Yeah, I think that is a really hard thing. Like, to be fair, when I said at the beginning that my mum's been in hospital, she's been in hospital since Sunday, right? And obviously I've done my own podcast before where I've explained that I didn't actually see and speak to my mum for 2 years because I was in a relationship. So when she went into hospital, the first thing I thought was, it can just change like that. Do you know what I mean? Luckily, she's home. She's on the mend, but it really makes you sit back and go, right, okay, well, something can happen so quick. You need to make every day worth it and let the people that you love know that you love them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because, that last day I said goodbye to my husband and he literally died in my arms at home. But I'm comforted that I was able to say that I loved him before he left.
Yeah.
Because my opinion is that the only bridge is love.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that carries over.
Yeah.
And so reinvent was a lot about just exploring and experimenting and trying things and being honest with myself. There's an unwillingness to not stand for what matters after a loss. Because what happens is what you really value rises up in the face of something like this. And then you're not going to give that up after. So I was always kind of truthful with people, but I became even more straightforward.
Yeah. Life's too short to be any other way.
Yep. When Dave, my husband, was dying, I literally called his friends and said, get over here now or you're going to miss it. I was that straight. He is dying. You will miss it if you don't come now. And some did, some didn't. But I did what I could to get the word out that this was happening. And they were on his borrowed time at that point.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that happens is that people leave. What people are grieving here all the time is you're too much, too many emotions, too much. Yeah. And it's going on for too long. And there's this unspoken timeline that you're allowed to grieve in. You're allowed to grieve someone you've loved for 25 years for a year, 1 year, before people are ready for you to move on. Practically, that's impossible. So the first year is a wasteland of grief. The second year it got real. So the first year I was completely numb. I was going through the motions, but I didn't feel like myself. I didn't know how to get back. The second year, it was real. It was real that he was never going to be there again. In the first year, I would be lying in bed and I could literally feel just before I woke up the memory of his warmth at my back. And then I would wake up and I would go right back into that crashing raw place right after he died. every day.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh, it's horrible. And then in the second year, it's real. In the second year, you know that they're not coming back, that your life is forever changed. And then the question is, what do you do next? The way that the world treats people who are grieving is that they're broken and they may never come back to whole again.
Yeah, that's very true.
Mm-hmm. And people are shamed for it, for feeling broken, for when their lives turn inside out, upside down. And if you think about all the things that broke in this last couple of years, 18 months, 2 years, that's a problem. You can't treat everybody like they're broken.
Mm-hmm. We all deal with grief completely differently. And I think the time scale thing that you did mention, like my mum lost her mum 27 years ago, I think.
Yep.
And she still grieves her mum every day.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and my mum says to me, she's like, even though it's 27 years, she was like, it feels like it was just yesterday.
Yep.
And she, you know, when it comes to my nana's birthday or, you know, the death day, we still go out for a meal, we still celebrate things. And people go, well, why? She's not been here for 27 years. What are you doing? And my mum's answer is, well, because the memory is still very much alive.
Yes.
And I think that's, we shouldn't be putting timescales, because it puts pressure on people who are grieving to get better. Do you know what I mean? But it's a steady process of, as you've said, reinventing your life based on that person no longer being there.
Yeah, the rawness of the pain does ease off. It does. It gets lighter. But I'll tell you, there are still days when the grief rises. I mean, and it just rises and takes over. And I have a boyfriend that I live with now. And that was the hardest passage of all, honestly. That was really rough to get back to that. But even still, there are days when I just go, I'm not in good shape today. And he's really gentle with me on those days. So it was reinventing in kind of all areas of my life. What do I do? What do I want to work at? What do I want to... The hardest thing is risking love again.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. You're opening yourself up to another person that could potentially hurt you further.
Yeah, exactly. And when you know the depth of the pain of someone being gone, it's not a separation, it's not a divorce, it's not they live somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
It's you will never see them again. Never. And that, the depth of that, it's really hard to risk your heart on that again. When I met my husband, it was 1992. And he died in 2016. And I decided that I got 2 epic love affairs, not 1. Just because. But I was in my 50s. I had long forgotten how to flirt or date. My body was not what it was before. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel confident, going out. Mm-hmm. And I had this, you start a conversation, you're talking to someone. I went to listen to music at a bar, and this guy was sort of chatting me up, and he was complaining about his ex-wife. And, oh, yada, yada, yada. And I'm thinking, at what point do I tell him that my husband recently died? Like, how fast does the conversation stop at that point?
Yeah.
right?
Probably
So
not the best thing to be talking about.
no, but a big piece of my reality. So,
Yeah.
if I don't speak of it and I go along in the relationship pretending that that's not this huge thing in my background, and my husband was a painter. So he left me 1,000 paintings, 1,000 paintings. And after he died, I couldn't afford to keep the studio. And so I wound up reducing the number of paintings and bringing them all home. I live in New York City. The studio was 500 square feet. My apartment is 800 square feet. I
Wow.
moved the contents of 30 years of professional work from his studio into my apartment. Yeah.
That's a lot.
It
That
was
is
a
a
lot.
lot.
Yes, it was a lot. So I have paintings. I have about 50 paintings on the wall. I have 2 bookshelves on their sides with paintings slotted into them. I have flat files, which are the things that you put paper artworks in. And then I have canvases on top of the flat files, a couple hundred of them.
Wow.
So,
That's a lot. That's definitely a lot.
yeah. And it complicated dating because anyone walking into my place is not walking into a photograph on a desk. They're walking into my husband's life work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can get that. I did obviously read that in the bio. That's why I was nodding, because I read the bio last night where you said that he left that many, and it helped you to kind of move on and do what you needed to do. And as you put on here, after 5 years, you've managed to make your own dreams come true from him doing that, which I thought was really, really sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. So at this point, I'm now, I'm able to sell his work. So I have a gallery set up and all of that. And I'm letting his work fly out into the world and send me back money, which I like, because for a while it was so hard. Things have meaning, and the piece of clothing that they wore all the time, or I have 17 tennis rackets. I have 35 hats, and I have 800 paintings. Things have weight. So, when you're clearing and you're releasing, how do you do that? Eventually, so it was 2016 and 2018, I decided that I was unwilling to live without love for the rest of my life. So I was going to risk it. Terrified, completely terrified. I decided to use an online dating app. Now, remember, the last time I dated was 1992.
Wow. Yeah, so a lot has changed since then. Jeez, I wasn't even a twinkle in my mum's eye at that point.
Exactly. I mean, and so I get on this online dating app and I start looking at men, and I couldn't be touched. I couldn't be kissed without having a panic attack. And I couldn't have someone's arm around me because I was only accustomed to how this one person I was with 25 years, how his arm felt around my waist.
Yep.
So everything else felt wrong. All I wanted to do with this dating app was I wanted to just get back in the game. Just try. And I was so scared. I can't even tell you. But it seemed like a dating app was a good way to kind of screen people.
Yeah.
So that as much as possible, I could not even meet the ones who weren't a good fit. I could screen them out before they even arrived. So I decided that who they were and what they were didn't matter to me at all. All I was going to do was I was going to say who I was as clearly as I could so that the ones who wanted me could find me.
Yep. Yep. No,
and that took a lot. Yeah, it took a lot of weight off, because I wasn't, okay, they need to have this income bracket and be this size, and they have to have blue hair and they have blue eyes, and they have to. Did not care. I did not care. I wanted my second epic love affair. And so everything was screened through that. And so I wrote my profile and I said things like, I really don't like sandy beaches. I don't. If you're going on a tropical vacation, don't take me. Makes me grumpy. So I said, I prefer rocky beaches to sandy ones. I'll go north instead of south. What I wanted to do was, if someone loved that, they would say, no, she's not for me. She's not for me. They would skip me out. And then I wouldn't have to say no later.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I think that's quite a good way of doing it. The fact that if somebody sees your profile and reads everything, they can then approach you rather than you having to do that, or, somebody approaching you that's not willing to do the things or, share the same common ground as such.
Yeah, exactly. I said I was a widow because if they had a problem with widows, I didn't want to talk to them.
It's a fair enough point. It's a big part of your life.
Yeah. I mean, I was that. I was a hot mess. I was like crying all the time. And so whoever dealt with me would sometimes have to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And I literally had on anniversaries and stuff, if a guy touched me, tried to kiss me, tried to put an arm around, I would say, don't touch me. And back off, literally jump back. It was not easy.
It would have taken time.
It takes time. And there was this one man that just kept rising to the surface. He was just okay with me as I was. And I was crazy. I mean, I remember, I think it was October or something. Dave died in September. Our wedding anniversary was October. Thanksgiving, his birthday, Christmas. I mean, there were, in that end of the year, there were all these.
Yeah, so that wouldn't have been easy at all.
Exactly. And so those were the times when I was much more emotional, much more likely to burst into tears or get angry or whatever. And I'm like, this is hard to be around. So I'm just going to give him a pass. Yeah. So I called him up and I said, you might not want to see me till January. I'll be through this by then.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. And then 2 days later, my cousin had a movie premiere at a museum here. And my mom and I were going. And 2 days after I told him not to see me till January, I called him up and invited him to come to this thing with me and my mother.
Oof. That was a big step.
I mean, the poor man probably was getting whiplash, you know, because I was like, come close, get away, come close, get away.
But he read your profile. He knew what he was in for.
Exactly. Exactly. And his being willing to just dance with that made all the difference in the world. Because it meant that the thing that gives us the strong relationship that we have at this point. So the date of our first date, it was July 1st. 3 years ago, July 1st. So we've known each other 3 years at this point. Mm-hmm. And the thing that made it even possible to do this was that when I would have a weird reaction, like, don't touch me, you know, or some strange thing, I had to ask myself, is it me? Is it him? Or is it us?
Yep.
And that was really valuable, because what that meant is that I knew what to do next. Because if it was me, there was nothing he could do that would fix that.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. See, a lot of people say, you know, even to myself, like it's a completely different spectrum as such. But for example, trust issues, right? So I find it really hard to trust people. And I will put a bad image of somebody in my head before they've given me a reason to not trust them. And that links in with what you've just said. I will sit back and somebody actually said to me, Meg, not to sound harsh, but that is your problem. That is not their problem. That is not like a problem between you both. That is your problem that you're putting onto other people. So I definitely get what you mean by that.
Yeah, there's a huge power in those 3 questions because you know what to do. You know, if it's them, then you have to have a conversation about what's not working for you about them. And if it's something between the 2 of you, like some miscommunication or something, then that's something to deal with together.
Yep.
We sort of went along and we alternated dates. And the point of our dates was to learn more about each other.
Okay.
So the first date, we went to a grocery store and we alternated picking food. And we had to say why we liked what we were picking. So I'd pick one, he'd pick one. And we were learning about each other. And then at the end, we both picked one item that we had never tried before. And then we loaded up our picnic and we went and we sat outside and we looked at the Statue of Liberty and we ate and we talked.
That sounds actually so nice, by the way. Like something as small as that, like it just opens up so much. I might have to steal that from you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so that was his first. And then mine was, there's lots of street art, mural art in New York City. Yep. So I did a graffiti mural art crawl through Harlem. And then we went and listened to blues.
Okay.
And so each date we did, you know, we went to a museum, we went for a long walk, we went to the botanical gardens. So each date, I think on some level it's really hard to sit opposite someone that you don't know and say, okay, tell me about your life.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is definitely hard. And I think it's the same, like you can't just sit there and be like, right, so this is who I am, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. Because it kind of seems scripted rather than actually sitting down and taking it in.
Yes. Yes. So doing it this way, we actually got to see what each other liked.
And have fun.
And have fun. And my idea with the online dating app was I knew I couldn't be touched. And so I needed to describe the kinds of things that I really love to do and do them with people who like the same kind of stuff. Because the point was we would be having fun. And in having fun, we could find out if there was something more.
Yep.
Now, Megan, because I miscalibrated the time zones, I'm fine. Okay. In terms of, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I was like watching the time and I was like, I know she needs to go in 5 minutes.
Yeah. No, I'm now fine.
Okay, cool.
So ultimately, we did these alternating dates and I, you know, said, come close, go away, come close, go away for a while. And we came by Christmas of, what was it? It took a while. So we met in 2018, Christmas of 2018. We were in the same place. We wanted to see more of each other and were thinking about moving in together. Okay. But we had never been intimate.
Okay.
We had never gotten there. And so if we were going to live together,
it would change everything again.
We needed to see if that worked.
Yep.
Because if it didn't work, we shouldn't do it. You know, honestly, we would have broken up if it hadn't worked.
Yeah.
And I was so scared. I was so scared. I had not been touched by anyone other than my husband since 1992. And it was 2018.
Wow.
Yeah. And when I felt any desire or thought of loving someone other than my husband, even though my head knew he was dead, my skin and my heart, it was not that easy. It was not that easy. And so what we decided to do, we decided that we were of the same mind, that we wanted to move in together if we could see if this worked.
Yep.
And we decided we would go to Tarrytown, which is about 45 minutes out of New York City, and stay in a hotel. And the only rule of our weekend was going to be one room and one bed.
Okay.
No promises. No other promises. And I had this red and white spotted pajamas. So like they closed at the ankle, they had a waist, they had long sleeves. I mean.
So you're basically covered from head to toe.
Head to toe. I mean, from my neck up was bare, my feet and my hands. That's it. That's it.
Hey, that's still a step. That is still a step that you took.
So I packed that. I packed 2 negligees, and I hoped that we would get through all of the clothes by the end.
Yeah.
And I had been told by other widows that it's very typical the next time after to cry.
Okay.
So I thought, okay, you know, we're going to try this. I'm going to have one good big cry and then we're done and clear sailing. Yeah, no, that's not how it worked. So just at different levels, you know, we sort of just held each other fully clothed for a while because we hadn't done that. And that seemed scary. And I just kept pushing into my own discomfort and my own fear. Tears, anger at my husband for leaving, feeling like I betrayed him. All of that, as I was doing this, I was pushing through. Just pushing through. So I'd push through until I hit a panic attack, literal full-on panic attack. And then I would say, stop. Let's go for a walk. Let's go to the pool. Let's go get something to eat, whatever. Just stop. And he'd go, okay. We would stop. And then come back and I would keep pushing myself into my own fears, into my own grief, until I hit another moment where I was like, ah. And my favorite thing was, you know, this time when it was hot and heavy. And I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
And he said, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding. And stopped.
Yeah,
anyway.
But exactly. I was gonna say, obviously, from what you said, he's patient enough to be like, do you know what? If I push anymore, it's gonna end up blowing back in his face.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing that he said to me, because he could see that I was trying. I mean, I wasn't getting through this easily. He could see I was willing to. This mattered. This relationship mattered enough to me that I was pushing myself harder than I ever had in my whole life. And so he said, if you were willing to be that brave, I was willing to be that patient. Yeah. Needless to say, we lived together. It worked.
I was gonna ask, is that the person you live with? That's so nice though. And I think obviously all I was thinking there is when you were saying about fear, believe it or not, like a quote came up today that I just found, and it says, fear has 2 meanings, which is forget everything and run, or face everything and rise, the choice is yours. And that's exactly what, like, when you were saying about the fear and how you can like break past it, that's all I could think about. And we do have a choice. And there's so many people that I've also seen, like, when people are nervous or they're anxious, technically it is the exact same feeling as being excited.
Yes.
You just need to know how to look at it and how to train your mind to look at it. And as I said, I was going to ask if that was the guy that you're living with. So I'm very happy that worked for you, because, as I say, from what you told me, he sounded like a genuine nice guy from the start. He approached you. He was patient. He knew what he was getting in for. Do you know what I mean? And he stood by your side every step of the way.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing. And when he moved into this apartment of 800 paintings of my deceased husband.
I was going to say there's going to be a lot of memories in that house.
A lot of memories, and was okay with that. But he and I had talked about, you have to make space for the other person. And there's a lot of space in my place taken up by my husband's life work. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about it, and he said, you do know we're going to have to move some things around so that there's space for me.
Yep.
So he moves in. Fortunately, he did not have much stuff. And and he goes, okay, so what are we going to move? What are we going to move around, as we discussed? And I was like, what do you mean move, change? You're all the change I can handle.
You're just like, just give me a minute. Right. Let me just have some time. Just stop.
But I mean, it was fair. It was fair that if he's living here, he needs his space. Yeah. Space to be. And so I freaked out and then calmed down, and then we moved furniture.
See, but again, you did it. Do you know what I mean? Like, normal people might have actually said, right, do you know what? This is actually way too much. Like, I've dived straight into this. I really can't do it. Whereas you were like, do you know what? He's right. It's going to be hard. He is enough change, but let's get it done.
Let's do it anyway. Yep. Bad Widow was about after my husband died, I couldn't find anyone who was talking from inside this raw place.
Yeah.
So there were lots of people, okay, here's how you handle your finances afterwards. Here's how you release things. But there was no one who was talking about how do you put yourself back together after your world blows up. There's nobody talking about that. And so Bad Widow, and people have a lot of assumptions and ideas. So you're a widow, you're going to behave this way. Mm-hmm. Most of them were wrong. And so what I did when I decided to be Bad Widow, which happened in January of 2017, a few months after my husband died, what I started doing was kind of writing the record. So people would say, well, this is your experience. And I would say, no, it's actually that. So that they could know, because grief is one of those things you don't talk about.
Yeah.
So people say and do things wrong all the time. But if you're not communicating what you actually need, what's actually going on, or if somebody isn't, how do you know? It's like, okay, I'm going to go on a date with you, and you need to, without my telling you, know what kind of food I like, what kind of restaurant, what kind of price point I'm comfortable with, what I want the atmosphere to be like. And if you don't get it right, you're going to pay. That's how it is with grief.
Yeah.
You're just meant to know, but how can you know? Because nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, and I think it is, as you say, like, grief isn't really spoken about much in a way of this is how it feels or this is what to expect. It's more always in a negative light.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of spot on. And obviously, I did want to kind of leave this till last because even I'm excited for this. You said that you just finished writing a book, and then it's coming
Yes.
out in a couple months. So can we have any insight? Because I'm actually really excited for this.
This is going to be a great book. It's called The Bad Widow Guide to Life After Loss, Moving Through Grief to Live and Love Again. So it's this book. I thought of writing just a business book. It's not that. I give some of the things that I use to help people move through on the last page of the chapters.
Right.
The rest of it is all stories, because everything I sorted out came through a breakdown. Something that didn't work, I needed to solve for. This book is so great and so juicy. So I talk about risking love. I talk about how do you re-engage and what made me realize I had to. I talk about how do you hit that. So there's this point where you contract. How do you get to that point where you say, I want more again?
Yep.
Because that is one of the hardest things to do. And so what were the stories that led me to that point, and how did I tip myself over so I could live again, live fully again and fearlessly again? It's a great book. It is a great book.
So are we going to be able to, once it's released, where can we kind of find it?
So it'll be on, it's going to be self-published. It's going to be on Amazon. It will come out September 20th, specifically.
Yep.
I will have a pre-sale page on the website. I will be talking about it before.
Yeah, I did put it in the comments. I just said that if anybody wanted to look. So I've put it on both Facebook and YouTube. So
awesome. Thank you.
No worries. So I had a look at the website as well, to be fair. Looking great, by the way, just saying. Literally had a little look, and I think just even like the first page, as I said before, like, no, I haven't experienced the loss. And you said, everybody goes through grief. So I came out of a relationship a few months ago that was only 2.5 years. But when you were saying about, re-engage and and reinventing as such, it really kind of stuck with me, because I was a completely different person in that relationship to what I've ever been single, and trying to find yourself again and get back out there. And believe it or not, I went on a dating website as well. I know I'm only 23, but no, I think, the main page, when I had a look at it, you said, trust. One of the bullet points was trust in yourself and your future possibilities after the heartbreak and death of a loved one. The reason that me and my ex actually broke up was because I wanted more from life and he wasn't going to support me in it, which links to what you were saying, where you go, where you've done it after loss. I've done it going, where do I want this journey that I'm on at the moment to take me? And does that need to change? So when you were speaking, I was kind of like, actually, like, it's not loss that I've experienced this with, but it's in a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. And so it is a loss. It's grieving a loss. When you go into a relationship, there are all these magical possibilities. So I define loss in a really particular way as the death of a future imagined or co-created, which will never come to pass. So you had a dream of that relationship, that when you saw that you were parting ways, that you wanted more and he wanted less. But it doesn't mean that the dream didn't die.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, like, because I know your thing is re-engage, reinvent, rebuild. I think it took a long time, and I know there's a lot of people that go through it as well, to realize, the journey that you're on isn't always the journey that you need to take. And sometimes it does take that risk. And your risk was re-engaging by doing something completely out the box to put yourself back out there. And I think, it's, as you've said, like, it's not discussed enough. how to get yourself back out there. And that's why when I was reading, obviously, through the website and listening to what you said and reading the bio yesterday, I was like, oh my God, this book is going to be amazing, because it's seeing it from somebody who's gone through it, rather than somebody just going, this is what it feels like, this is what you need to do, blah, 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 and being like a guide, rather, whereas yours is like, I've been through this. I know what's going to happen. I know that it works. Do you know what I mean? So...
yeah. And I also, people need to honor their own experience and their own process. So for some people, getting right back into work is a really good thing. They feel most themselves there. For some, it's not. It's, I guess the thing that I would say to people who are grieving or supporting someone who's grieving is trust yourself. And if you're supporting someone who's grieving, listen to what they say and trust that what they say is true. Because what happens a lot, I had a really hard time making decisions and taking action. I was, a decisive, competent person, and then I wasn't. Suddenly, then I wasn't. And what happened, because people wanted to help me, was that they poured into my not knowing all their ideas about what I should be doing. You should get out there.
There's two ways that it can always be taken, though, isn't there?
Yeah. And sometimes they were right and sometimes they were wrong. But what I discovered was that I needed to filter through my own knowing of myself and my own trust, because fundamentally, the thing with advice, if someone says you should do this, they're not the one who lives with the consequences. You are.
Yeah.
So they can say it, you can do it, but then you live with the fallout after. And so I needed to be sure that I was willing to take risks, and I was also risk averse. So I was willing to take the risks which were congruent with me and with the values that I had and with the direction I saw myself going. I was unwilling to take the risks other people thought I should take, that I didn't agree with.
Mm-hmm. But sometimes you have to put your foot down, I think, because there's so many expectations from other people, but those expectations are normally from people that don't know how it feels to be in that situation.
Exactly. And so you can honor that they're trying to help you, but you don't necessarily have to go along if it's not a fit. If it is, go for it.
Yep.
But it is necessary to stand for yourself, because grief and the understanding of grief is so poor, in my opinion, that people get it wrong a lot, and they say and do the wrong things a lot. And what that means is that you get angry or burst into tears or whatever. And then that drives people away, which makes a bigger problem.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I think, as you say, for people who are grieving in any ways, like... to be fair, like, even going through a relationship breakup, the amount of my friends that were like, right, okay, you need to get back out there, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I'm like, whoa. Like, I've just come out of a 2.5-year relationship. You're telling me a week later to get back into things and to go back on dating websites. And I'm like, that's not going to work, because that's 2.5 years of my life that's now finished. Because of me wanting more, I don't want to go back into something where I'm going to be somewhat pulling myself back down to not doing what I want to do.
Exactly. So if you came out of the relationship because you wanted more, then the good question is, what is the more that you want?
Yeah. And
who are the men who would support that? And where do you find them? Yeah. So there's a lot about loss that creates much better questions for living. And that's the thing that really interests me about grief, That's the side, that's another side they don't talk about. There's a real appreciation when you lose something big. There's a seeing what's there that you've been ignoring.
Yeah. No, as I say, everything that you've said tonight, I've kind of been sat there going, right, I'm going to take a bit of that and I'm going to take a bit of that. And that's why I have people on here, though. It's not just for people to watch. It's for me to learn, learn everybody's experiences. And it does for the people that are going through it. Obviously, it helps them as well to know that they're not on their own. What I would really be interested in is obviously getting you back on just before the book releases. So we can get a bit more promotion on that. So we can definitely sort that out. But in terms of obviously everything, I am extremely thankful for how much you've opened up. I've asked a couple questions. I had my questions answered. But yeah, I would love to get you back on before the book releases, even if it's like a little bit shorter than this one, but just to get the promotion out there.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be great.
No worries. Well, obviously, apart from that, I've literally got no other questions. I'm not going to lie. You pretty much covered everything for me. I'm actually, even though I don't know you apart from on this, I am genuinely happy that you are happy, because I know it's taken you so much time. It's taken patience on both parts. And it's so nice to see you have been successful in your 3 steps of what you've done, and you're happy. So it shows that it's really nice to see.
Yeah, online dating with a really rigorous screening process is awesome.
I'll keep that in mind, right? I'll need to look at my profile later and just be like, right, okay, let's think back to this podcast. What is it that I want?
So I committed to the man I love now using an online dating app when I had not dated since 1992 in 6 months.
Wow. But that's what you're saying. Like, I think you can tell a lot from a person just by the first couple of weeks. Like, normal, like, not normal people, but some people would have probably backed off the first time you were like, nah, can't do it. Do you know what I mean? But he stuck by you and it's worked. So
yeah, it's awesome.
It is. You can see how happy you are, which is cute.
Yeah, I mean, this has been such a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been lovely speaking to you. As I say, we'll email soon about getting it, even if it's a couple of days before the launch, to get the pre-sale and stuff. But thank you again for coming on, and I have enjoyed our little chat.
Yes, me too, so much. You have a great evening.
And you. Thanks. Bye.
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 Bye.